Yeah, and from your point of view, what is the organizational philosophy? What's its definition, and generally what it is?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the philosophy of an organization. If they say our philosophy is this, I mean, you find this in many companies, and it actually did not play a major role in the interviews, and that might be because often these descriptions of a company's philosophy, they do not have that much to do with philosophy. And so I could not really answer what it is, and I think we would need a sociologist to tell us how it is used. But I think it's an interesting question, and it could be even more interesting to ask what an organization's philosophy could be. And yeah, to answer that, we would have to see what is the genuine philosophical perspective on an organization. And yeah, if we do that, we can compare it to other perspectives, like the business. The traditional shareholder value maximization, for example, has a clear concept of an institution, and there the question is, how can we make more profit and how to maximize it? That is the main question we have if we look at an organization. And if you have an ethical perspective, you ask how should people act within these organizations? What is morally right? What is wrong? But if we have a philosophical perspective, and if we really have, if we really want to talk about the philosophy of an organization, we have to ask the big questions. The what is an organization question, and what is our specific organization? Like what's its nature, and what's its purpose? And I think only through these fundamental questions we could give sense to these philosophies of organizations.
Yeah, thank you. And you told something that philosophical perspective of companies can affect other parts of the company, like ethics, and also maybe some high-level documents like quality management system and stuff like that. How this philosophy of organization can affect the high-level documents of an organization?
Yeah, that's really interesting if you look at it, because if we take ethics, we have these codes of conducts and these ethical guidelines. Any larger company has these, and so how does this relate to the philosophy of the organization? I mean, we have these guidelines, and what is not in the guidelines is usually the why. So to give you an example, I worked as a student in a real estate company. And I remember that in the customer service department, they had the 10 golden rules of customer service or whatever. And so they had an idea of how their employees should behave towards their customers. And the question would be like, how do we get there? Like, where do we get these views from? And from an academic perspective, of course, you could say we have a general ethical theory like utilitarianism. And then we have this general theory and just apply it and have we derive the ethical guidelines. That would be probably like a solid way to do it. Another way would be to think out of profit maximization and to say, oh, we want our employees to behave the way that we maximize profit. That is all given. And if we ask like how it relates to, or how it could relate to the philosophy of an organization, I think that by asking the what question and by clarifying what this company is about, I think that might be the best starting point if you want to develop ethical guidelines, if you want to talk about quality, if you want to talk about strategy, like where are we going, like what is the purpose of this endeavor. And so I would say that, of course, not necessarily, but if it is, like we could think of an organization's philosophy as the breeding ground for other documents that follow this.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you also talked about professional ethics within a company And I want to know more in detail and more exactly that how organizational philosophy can help to improve the professional ethics within the companies.
All right, yeah, so it really depends a bit on how we think about ethics. Most of the times ethics serves only as a regulatory power in companies. For example, by these guidelines, we only have these rules and they are to be followed. And of course, organizational philosophy could play a role in this, in developing these rules. But what is more important than the regulatory power of ethics would be the creative power of ethics. And that is something that would also be within the organization's philosophy. Like, where do we go as a company and what do we want the company to be? That is a question that is, of course, that has an ethical dimension and that can unlock the desires of employees to do something good, but also to do something economically solid. I mean, that is something profitable. It is not about getting rid of the profit or anything, but more about finding good ways for a company to act. And it's quite obvious that there's a certain danger to an approach like this. Like if you become a blind optimist, and if you, I mean, there are theories by ethicists who say that anything a company does is just good. It's the political framework that matters or whatever. But that is a negative form of ethics we have there. Like, it is not an active form. And I think if we understand organizational philosophy in this way, we would definitely have a positive framing of the word and a positive concept, something that asks to be realized.
Yeah, thank you. And just let's imagine a company hired or received consultant from a philosopher and made some plans and some roadmaps to do some philosophy within the company. Who's responsible to perform that map and look for that? Who's responsible for that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I talked to 8 people, and none of them thought about the CPO as a guy with. Or a girl or a woman with their own office. With their own office, of course, but not with their own department. Like, there is not a philosophy department where all the senior philosophers and junior philosophers walk around and they check on the other employees if they're following the roadmaps of the philosophical visions or whatever. The role might be a bit more, a bit more subtle and a bit more within the organization, because the way we talked about organizational philosophy now, it is not something that comes from the outside and is put on the organization from the outside, and then people have to implement it somehow. But it is more a process of self-discovery of the organization, and so it is an actual question how to implement that and how to do that. And there are different approaches. I mean, in the book there are suggestions from workshops to coachings to projects, to interactions with strategy and everything else. And I think we cannot. We will have to find out. Let's put it this way. We have to find out how to do that, and we have to find out how these impulses, these philosophical interventions, maybe sometimes these debates that are being opened, how they are being implemented and how they develop within the organization.
Yeah, and it's normal because it's a very new field of study, and a lot of researchers around the world are doing research in this area, and to make it clear if how to execute these roles. And during in your talk, I realized you told the chief philosophy officer is somebody coming from outside of the company, and the question is that is it like a consultant or employee of the company? It's my question.
And it's a good question, and one of the let's call it hot topics of the conversation. So we have different approaches to that in the conversations, and some people introduce the chief philosophy officer, as you would understand it first, as just a C-level employee, and that is one concept that came up. So the chief philosophy officer, maybe not having his own department, but having his seat at the table and being responsible for, maybe not responsible, but doing philosophy, whatever that means then. That is one version to play it, and there are certain advantages, disadvantages. Like one thing that became clear in the interview with Nika Wiedinger, for example, was that someone who is actually employed by a company would be involved in everything that's happening. So would have an inside perspective on what's going on, and would have the task to bring that to light, what is going on there. And that is good in one way, because you are involved and you are kind of having the same experience as the other employees who are part of this organization. But it also has a downside, and that is, of course, the question of dependency. That's why some suggested a limited time for chief philosophy officers. But dependency, I mean, of course, if you imagine a chief philosophy officer who brings to light blind spots, and who questions rationalities, and who questions terms, and basically who questions everything that is going on around him, he might not have that many friends first, or at least not that long-lasting friends. I don't know. It is uncomfortable, and it is an irritation, if you want to put it that way. And yeah, so it would be an actual question if you can even implement a role with this perspective as an in-house role. It's again something we have to find out, and something people will find out. But that is one reason why many opted for the chief philosophy officer as a label, but as a consultant role. Or I think someone said you can drop the chief. I think it was Luc. The chief philosophy officer should not have power in the sense of power that comes with responsibilities and everything. He should be, or she should be, free spirit and should be a troublemaker. I think that's what Ryan Stelter said. We have both possibilities, and even a third possibility that Hans Rusinek brought up, to maybe take the chief philosophy officer as a provocation, and as something that might be fruitful for the debate on how to develop organizations, because it takes our attention to blind spots and to things that are not working that well, maybe, and that need to be explored actually. And maybe we do not need some philosopher that comes in, but maybe we just need employees of companies to have the freedom and to have the let's say freedom, to have the freedom to perceive what is going on around them, and to not box them in certain rationalities. But yeah, that's the three options, I think: internal, external, and provocation. But as I said, we have to find out.